All right, everyone, we are live, second week in a row. We're going to give it a little bit of time for everybody to get logged on. For those of you that are as old as I am, you may remember a program called Romper Room, where she always held up her mirror and she said, "I see Bobby and Susie and Jane and whomever." So if you're here with us, as you get signed on, please say hello. And let me know that you are here, but we're going to just let it go for a little bit because I know it takes some time for everything to get set up. And hopefully this week, unlike last week where there were some Facebook glitches, I'll be able to see your comments a little more real time. Last time they started showing up after I ended the live. If that happens again this week, I'm not hearing from anybody that that's the situation, but if that happens again this week, I will do what I did last time and answer all of your questions in the chat and make sure that everybody gets a response. So if you are out there in live land, feel free to say hello and let us know that you're here. Otherwise, I'll just do what I do and I'll talk to myself. I see Lalitha's joined us, Ola, from downtown Barcelona. Hopefully we'll see some other people joining here in a little bit. I know there was a lot of interest in this topic. I also know that this time doesn't always work for everyone, so we will of course post the replay so that everyone can catch up. But we are going to be talking today about meetings with purpose, because I keep hearing over and over again that people have too many meetings, and it seems like the pandemic has actually created a need to have more meetings. I'm not sure why we need to have more meetings, but it has created that need to have more meetings, and people are just getting worn out. So we're going to talk today about why this is and what you can do about it. Put the brakes on it and back up a little bit. So if you're here, please give a shout out in the chat so I know that you're here. And please type your questions as you think of them. Maybe that will help with getting the answers included in the session. But like I said, if we have the same problem that we had last week where I didn't see any of the questions until we ended the live, I will go back through and answer all of those questions. So why do we have so many meetings? I think this starts with it's a security issue. And I don't mean cybersecurity. I mean personal security, feeling safe. Like if we have meetings, then we're connected and we know what's happening and we can just keep the momentum going. But the reality is we create this constant flow of meetings. I did a poll a couple weeks ago about how many meetings people had in a day, and the top count was 10. Now, if a work day is 8 hours and you have 10 meetings, what are you doing all day? You're just bouncing from one Zoom call or one conference call to another, and at some point, probably by the second meeting, none of that is providing any value and you're not paying attention. The most that people can pay attention without a break, the maximum is 50 minutes, and that is a stretch. Most people pay attention for as little as 10 minutes before they're no longer interested in what you're talking about. So my first tip is don't make the meeting schedule for an hour. I know that all of the popular calendar tools automatically create meetings for an hour, but create the meeting for 50 minutes at the most. 30 minutes would be even better. So try that for starters. And now, when you create the meeting for 50 minutes, that does not mean, oh look, I've got 10 minutes to run over. You need to make sure that your agenda is in line with 50 minutes, not longer. So that's my first tip. First tip, don't schedule the meeting for the full length of time that's defaulted in your calendar. Schedule it for less. If your calendar tool allows it, change the default time so that it always just sets to 50 minutes for you and you don't have to do it. But that's my first thing, is be cognizant of the time. Especially if we're doing Zoom calls, that allows everybody a 10-minute break before the next meeting starts. But hopefully by the end of this, We're going to reduce the number of meetings, and we aren't going to just keep popping from meeting to meeting like a bunch of little jumping beans. So we have first question, how to tell an overenthusiastic manager that we don't need so many meetings. All right, well, we need to work with that overenthusiastic manager, bless their hearts, and get them to understand when it's time for a meeting, when an email will suffice, when a chat will suffice. So the first thing is, if the team has worked together on a team agreement and a communication plan, something that we strongly stress and teach in our collaboration course, that communication plan should have some definition to help shape when we're having a meeting, when we're having a quick chat, when we're having an email, so that the team as a whole can put some definition around that and help. But I'm going to give you a big tip. It's called a power meeting. Now, power meeting does not mean we all put on our suits and we go all very soldier-like into a meeting and some bigwig is standing at the front of the room. That's not what I mean by a power meeting. Power is an acronym, and we're going to talk about what each of the letters stand for today. And if you apply this concept to deciding if you need a meeting or not, you may find you're automatically reducing the meetings. So I had someone say to me once, well, if I go through all those steps, that's a lot for every meeting. Exactly. So if you don't want to go through those steps and take the time to put the planning into the meeting, then chances are it shouldn't be a meeting. So anybody else that's joined, just backing up a little bit, if you have questions, post them in the chat as soon as you think of them, because we did have a bit of a delay last time and I saw all the questions after we ended the live, and I'll try to weave those into what I'm saying. Say hello, and then at the end we're going to talk about how you stay connected after this. But right now we're going to keep talking about power meetings. So the P in the power meeting stands for purpose. Why is the meeting necessary? Hint, because we need a status meeting is not the purpose. So if you can't write a well-defined purpose for that meeting that you would be willing to share with an outsider who was looking in at your meeting to see what's the purpose of this meeting, stop right there and rethink. But you want a really defined purpose. So if I'm attending your meeting, why am I there? What is the purpose of this meeting? If your purpose is to have a check-in, don't have the meeting. And we're going to talk about some alternatives to meetings after this. But first thing, the purpose. The O in power is outcomes. What do you want to achieve? Another hint, if the outcome is, I as the manager just need to know what you are all up to, stop, because that is not a reason to have a meeting. And we're going to talk about alternatives again. So what are the outcomes? What should every person who is attending this meeting be getting out of the meeting? If people aren't getting anything out of it, then it's just for you to hear yourself talk. And again, that's not a reason to have a meeting. So backing up, we have purpose. Why are we having this meeting? What's the purpose of the meeting? Outcomes. What are we going to achieve by the end of the meeting? What is the outcome that we want? W. What and why? You've heard the expression, what is in it for me? As the attendee of that meeting, what is in it for me? What am I getting out of this meeting? Why should I give up my time that is valuable and attend a meeting? And so many times, especially if we're in management positions, we make this assumption, hey, we're in charge, so the why people should be attending is because I told them so. Not a valid reason for why somebody should attend a meeting. So what is in it for me as the attendee? You need to be able to answer that as the person scheduling the meeting. The E, engagement. How are you going to keep people engaged? You not only need to think that through when you're planning the meeting, but you need to communicate that to people. So for example, if during the meeting you're going to be asking people to vote or use their cameras because it's going to be video, or participate in a poll, or anything that they need to know about how they are going to engage in the meeting and what is expected from them, that needs to be part of the E, engagement. And then the R, roles and responsibilities. Who is doing what during the meeting? Do you need a note taker? Do you need a recorder? Do you need someone handling the AV or the video if you're, in a bigger room? Do you need someone to manage breakout rooms if you're using Zoom? Do you need someone to set up various tools like polls ahead of time and then run them during the meeting? Who's going to be responsible for facilitating the conversation? All of those things need to be taken care of as part of roles and responsibilities. And again, you want to share that with people. So let's do a quick recap. I'm sure some people may have joined late. We have a power meeting. That means we are going to talk about all of these things before we ever hit that little invite button on whatever calendar tool you're using. What is the purpose? Why are we having the meeting? What are the outcomes? What do we want to achieve by the end of the meeting? What's in it for me if I'm attending the meeting? How are you going to keep people engaged? And what are the roles and responsibilities? So power. So when you plan a meeting, if you can't answer those questions clearly and succinctly in a way that you would want to share with others, then rethink whether you're going to have the meeting. Now, I've said a couple times share with others, so let's unpack that for a second. I actually encourage you to share the power answers that you've written down, not just thought in your head, with everyone attending the meeting. So instead of just putting the time and a subject line and the link to Zoom or Google or whatever you're using, actually have a body of the email that spells out the power. Tell people, what are you doing? Or if you find, like me, that people don't read the body of the emails because they've gotten so used to receiving so many meeting invites that they just click accept on all of them and fill up their calendar because that's what's expected, then they're going to miss that. So you have to train people to read that, but also send a follow-up email and let people know what's expected and that you actually are happy to see them in this meeting, that you want to have the meeting. So again, if we're thinking in the back of our heads, if I have to do all of that just to have a meeting, I'm never going to get anything done because I'm going to be planning meetings. Another hint, you might be planning too many meetings. So when could we not have a meeting? If all you want from people is a status on what they're doing, you don't need to have a meeting. You can set up all kinds of tools and mechanisms for people to check in if that's what you need. We can delve more into that about why you feel the need to constantly check in with people. But if you're just going to have a status meeting so you can go around the room and everybody can tell you what they're doing and how many other meetings they're attending and who they're talking to and what they're working on, don't have a meeting. Just don't do it. Just don't have a meeting. For those of you on the call, on the live right now, if you're thinking of questions as I'm talking, please type them into the chat with the hope that I might see them. And I'm going to answer Magda's question about the ideal number of participants in just a minute. So if status is the only purpose of your meeting, you probably don't need to have a meeting. If you just want people's opinions, and this one can be controversial, because I've said it before and people are like, no, I want conversation. Okay, that's very different. If you want people to agree or disagree on a topic or a question, you don't need to have a meeting. You can send that as an email with voting buttons and let everybody express their opinion, whether they agree or disagree. You can also use polls. I use Mentimeter a lot. Now, if what you're trying to do is get people to have that conversation because you want ideas presented and then you want to have a conversation, what I would suggest you do is use something like Mentimeter that has a way for people to submit questions or ideas in advance of the meeting so that when you get into the meeting, your purpose is to have the conversation, not come up with the ideas first. So hopefully that makes sense. So you have to think about what is the best use of our time. There are a limited number of hours in a day. There are a limited number of hours in the workday. And if you spend all of that time in meetings, when are you actually creating products or services that add value? You're not. You're doing a whole lot of talking. So before I go into some other ideas of what to do instead of traditional meetings, Magda had a question. What's the ideal number of participants in a meeting? Well, the answer is it depends. And what it depends on is the purpose, back to the P in power, the purpose and the outcomes of the meeting. So if you want to have a discussion with a product team to make a decision on how you're going to technically complete something, then don't have a cast of thousands in there who don't have any technical input into the conversation. Invite the people who can actually participate and contribute to the conversation. If you're having more of a forum or a panel, that can also be a meeting where you have a group of people who are presenting a topic and discussing it, then there's not necessarily a limit on the number of people, but again, focus on the outcomes. Because if what you want when you're doing, for example, a panel or a forum is for people to listen to the speakers and then be able to organically ask questions, you have to have the proper tools in place to be able to do that. There are different tools like Slido where people can post questions and then other people can upvote them and the moderator can just ask the most important questions. You have to have that planning to do those big, like say you're having a couple hundred people, to have those big meetings. Otherwise, the what's in it for me isn't there because I'm just going to be listening and trying to think, how can I ask my question? Because there's no way for me to do that. And I'm going to lose interest. And then we have the group in between. So I went small group of technical conversation, and then I went big conference. There's the in between. If you have someone in a leadership position or a management position who is uncomfortable with where they are, one of the things they do on both emails and meetings is they invite everyone they can possibly think of to the meeting. And that tends to happen when they've been burned in the past, where they had a meeting and they didn't invite someone and that someone got a bit bent out of shape and they got criticized. Well, next time you have a meeting, make sure you invite me. I need to be part of the conversation. People always make it about themselves, right? So when that happens to someone, then the natural inclination is the next time you send an email or you schedule a meeting, you not only include that person that you got chastised for not inviting, but you tend to start inviting everybody else. Oh, well, if I'm going to invite Larry, then I better invite Amanda, and I better invite Mohammed, and I better invite, because they're going to get upset if I don't invite them too, because they're on the same level of the org chart as well. And next thing you know, you have 30 people in a meeting when you need 5 or 6. So be really careful about that. And those are the conversations that are hard to have. You need to let the people know, hey, we're going to have somebody taking notes. I would be happy to share those with you after the meeting. But our outcome for this meeting is X, Y, and Z. And we want to make sure we can do that quickly and then get the information to you. So again, by doing your power and making sure you know what your purpose and your outcomes and going through that exercise, then you can make sure you have the right number of people. And more importantly, not the right number, but the right people. Because you want to be able to make decisions. So if you have somebody in the room who's not able to make decisions or not able to participate in the conversation because they're not versed on the topic, then that's just adding more for you as the facilitator to try and juggle, and you may be missing out on the point of the meeting. So that probably wasn't the answer that anybody wanted because it wasn't a specific number, but it really does depend on what your purpose and your outcome is. It also depends on your engagement. Like I said in the example of the forum or the panel, you know, your engagement is very different than when you're having a technical team discuss a solution to a product. So hopefully that answered the question. I don't see any other questions. I just have this fear they're all going to pop up at the end. But let's keep going for another minute or so about different things you can do instead of having a meeting. So we talked about using email, the voting buttons in email. Also, if you just need to tell people, I've been invited to so many meetings, and the person starts with, okay, so I need to share this with all of you. And they proceed to tell us, sometimes almost verbatim, what they just heard in another meeting. Well, the answer to that one is send an email. If you're just telling people information that doesn't require any kind of response, it's for situational awareness. Maybe it's a change in a corporate policy, or it's, hey, letting you guys know the parking lot's paved on Friday. I don't know what it is. But if you're just giving people information, put it in an email, because it does a couple things. For our visual learners, it makes sure that they have something to read, and it also allows people to process that information and to have something to go back to, especially if you're telling them something that happened higher up in the food chain. It allows them to have something to go back to. Now, I've had people say to me, well, I do this because I want to see that everybody was paying attention because they don't read my emails. Okay, your problem then is not about having meetings. Your problem is about communication. And you need to work on that. Again, back to that communication plan and making sure that people understand all methods of communication are important and need to be acknowledged. So an email is no less important than a meeting or a voting poll or a wiki page. Whatever it has, it's still information, and it all has its place on the team, and it doesn't get downgraded because you weren't staring the person in the eye when you were having that conversation. Some other things to think about, again, I mentioned the polls. Use all different kinds of tools to get conversations started, so when you get into the meetings, you can use them for decision making. All right. But at the end of the day, roll on back, do the P.O.W.E.R. And if you immediately say to yourself, I'm not going to spend all this time writing that, or you find out you're just putting sloppy answers down to say, oh, I did P.O.W.E.R, then don't have the meeting and think about other ways to have the information be relayed. There's nothing wrong with using chat like Slack or WhatsApp if it's important, if it's a really short little message or just a check-in. Hey, wanted to see how you guys were doing. I actually have had people call meetings where they get everybody into the room and they're like, hey, we haven't talked in a while. I just wanted to see how you're doing. I've worked with a lot of technical teams, and that is probably the most frustrating thing, is you just got your thought broken to go into a meeting that had no purpose. So use the tools. If they're short snippets of conversations, use your chat. If it's information that you're just sharing with people, use your email. If you're trying to collect information, then use tools to collect that information. You can send it an email and say, hey guys, can you complete this survey by tomorrow? Can you complete this poll? Make it really quick and really easy for people to participate. And if you have a need to know, hey guys, what are your thoughts on this? Then give them a forum, like using the Mentimeter questions, to be able to present their information, which will also trigger other people to think of other questions rather than just coming at them in a meeting. And then once you've collected all the information, go through your P.O.W.E.R and see if it warrants a meeting. But really, don't start with a meeting. Start with exploring what are the other methods of communication that you can use based on your communication plan, and only use meetings when it's something that really warrants having a meeting. And hopefully the next time I ask the question, how many meetings do you have today? I don't hear 6 to 10 as the most popular answer, because really that's painful. That makes my poor little ears in my head hurt. So think about why you're having meetings and rethink why you're having meetings. And if you're not the person that's always scheduling meetings, you're the victim of the meetings, try to, manage up and encourage, hey, can we do that in an email next time? Or even, hey, as part of our team agreement, can we have a communication plan so we're all clear? Don't make it about that person. Don't be pointing fingers. But can we have a communication plan so that we're all clear on how we're going to work together, and make sure that we are saying things the right way at the right time to add value? Because at the end of the day, if a meeting doesn't add value, it's just a waste of time. Even if it's an important topic, if it doesn't add value, it's a waste of time. So I promised that I would give you guys a little offer at the end of this live if you attended today. And I have 4 slots next week for breakthrough calls. to talk about strategy on collaboration and communication. If you're stuck on something, you're not sure how to approach something, I have 4 slots next week for those calls, and I will be giving them out to the first 4 people who send me a message either in this chat or on LinkedIn. And then I will send you the link for Calendly to pick a time that works for you, but I only have 4. So if you're watching this on replay, you may have already missed your chance. But I want to offer that out. I have 4 slots next week for a breakthrough call to talk about where your teams might be stuck with communication and collaboration. And the first 4 people who send me messages will get the Calendly link, and I will talk to you. I think there are maybe some slots this week or next week. And I will be apparently doing these lives every week at this time by popular demand. Who knew? And so I will be posting the topic later this week for next week, and hopefully you will join. So I'm going to hang out here for another minute or so to see if we have any more questions that come in. But I want to thank everyone who did attend today. I know for some people this is lunchtime, and for other people this is the start of the day. And for those of you in Australia and New Zealand watching this on replay, I'll try to get something scheduled that's more time appropriate for you and not the middle of the night. But I hope that you guys find this information useful, and if you have a topic you want me to discuss that has to do with team communication and collaboration, by all means send me that in a message as well, and I'll either gather those all up and put them in a poll to see which topics get upvoted, which is how these 2 topics came to be last week and this week, or I'll just make a decision on my own because it's my life and decide what to do. So Jennifer, I'm glad you could join and that you're happy that these are going to be weekly, so thank you for that. And I have a feeling we might have some more questions that come in after. Like I said, I will answer them in the chat to make sure everybody gets an answer, and look forward to talking at myself, but hopefully to all of you, next week on a different topic about collaboration and communication. So everybody have a great week, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.